everybody, and welcome back to the fourth sector. And it is not only race week, but it's also a race review today. As always, you are joined by myself and Joe. Joe, how are you, mate? You all right?
Chilling,
chilling and killing and billing as well.
I'm always billing, and I'm not on the verge of bankruptcy at all.
He's a billing machine.
I'm absolutely fine financially.
Yeah, we're both fine. We're both doing great. We're not being crippled by a podcast that's failing. But we are.
They don't have to know it's failing. We're fine.
They know it's failing because there is no they. That's the problem.
True.
So we have had a few days to digest France because we always seem to never do a podcast on a Sunday. Some weeks it's my fault, some weeks it's Joe's fault. All weeks we are shit. However, we are going to talk about France. You were
battered on Sunday, weren't you? I
can't remember. I think I was really hungover. I can't remember. I actually can't. We came into France. We knew it was going to be hot. We predicted a Ferrari wouldn't finish. We predicted, you predicted a Leclerc pole and a Hamilton win.
Yeah, it was almost golden, really, wasn't it?
There was a point where it was looking pretty good, and I think
where Verstappen had pitted and then the safety car.
Oh, mate, and Lewis inherited P1, and I thought, holy shit, it's happening. But I don't think Lewis would have kept him behind anyway.
It was a VSC, wasn't it, for Leclerc's one, because they pushed it out the side bit. Am I wrong?
No, full safety car.
Full safety car, but he didn't get to pit under proper and keep P1, did he?
No. So even though it was full safety car, Lewis boxed, and I think Max had just closed that gap enough to get back out in front, which we all know realistically, based on that 10-second gap that got built up, I think that was a pretty foregone conclusion anyway. But would have been nice to see them battle it out for the lead with Lewis in front and see him, make some defensive maneuvers and have a bit of a throwback to last season, which we did in many respects, having Max and Lewis battling it out for the win. But of course, the Mercedes, nowhere near as competitive as it was last year. Mine was a Max double. Obviously, I got the Max win. If I'm honest with you, and I said this to you,
you were cursing it, weren't you?
I was cursing him. I did. I thought I was going to pick a Ferrari. So I favoured Ferrari for this track. And I favoured Ferrari.
And they were by far the fastest car, weren't they?
Yeah, they were better. I think that Carlos Sainz, given some different circumstances, because that safety car actually hindered Sainz as well in many ways for this strategy.
His fastest lap was 2 seconds faster than everyone else's.
Yeah. I
2 seconds.
I think we know he would have very much been in the mix without the penalties. And of course, he probably could have been well in the mix for the podium places without Charles bidding it. So I guess that is the big talking point of the weekend. So we'll start there. Now, with the predictions, there wasn't too much crazy. What was our wild cards quickly? Oh no, I did Gasly podium and you did Ocon podium for the French.
Not even remotely happening, is it?
No, it was a negative weekend for the French drivers.
Ocon was P8, which is where he is in the standings as well. But Gasly was very much not in the mix. No, he was. That car is very slow, isn't it?
Mate, the AlphaTauri, man, they are in a bad spot all round. And I think that, you've kind of got to give the drivers a bit of a break, because I did have a point where I was kind of starting to lean towards Yuki's not it. And then but that car is just, at the end of the day, he's never really been given a great car underneath him. So, or even a decent car underneath him to try and push on. So,
no, I think Gasly outperformed the car a couple of years in a row, didn't he?
Yeah. And I think that gave people, including me, some false expectations.
Yeah.
On what to expect from them. And now they're really in the shit because Gasly can't even pull that thing into the points half the time.
And as we've said before, he was a regular Q3 visitor,
big time
last season, like regular.
He was. I think even last French Grand Prix, I'm pretty sure he qualified like P5, like ahead of the Ferraris, ahead of the McLaren. And yeah, he did have that in him. But this year, that car, again, Baku was a good race for them, and they should have scored double points, bar a freak incident with Yuki's DRS. But yeah, they're just really finding it hard at the moment. But maybe, just maybe they're going to have a new engine soon, but we'll get to that. But yeah, so the big talking point is, of course, Charles Leclerc as a whole, because this is the third time this season that Charles Leclerc has crashed out from a winning position. Not crashed out, sorry, retired from winning position. I could feel you were about to erupt at me when I said that.
Yeah. Okay. We've briefly discussed this, and as we said, there was some questions thrown around by the commentary team on Sunday, because the last time out in Austria, there was an issue with Leclerc's clutch where he couldn't get back to 0% throttle, could he? Sorry, not throttle, not clutch throttle, where he couldn't get back to 0% throttle. And there was a distinct bit of the shouting that he could just about make out after he crashed on lap 18, or what was it, lap 18 or something?
Lap 17, I think, or 18. But yeah, either way, yeah.
He crashed out, and you heard him mention the throttle. Now, there are two things that could mean. One is that there was an issue with the throttle, or two is that he couldn't get it to come back out after he was in the wall. I think there's a lot of fail-safes in place for the car to not be revving its engine when it's in a wall, if I'm not mistaken.
Generally not. I think also these cars have got very sensitive gearboxes to a point where even like a fully functioning gearbox with these Formula One cars, it can be hard to select reverse gear in some cases. So that also may be an issue. I'm not sure.
But what I wanted to bring to you is something that I think is a possibility, and I'm not saying it's definitely the case. He crashed out, and at the time we were doubting the rear end grip anyway, weren't we? Because this was when Max had boxed, and Max was all over the back of him for the whole 18 laps, right?
Yeah.
So there's two possibilities there. One is that he just lost the rear end because there was no grip because the tires were fucked because it was so hot, and he lost the rear end going around a corner. There could have been a gust of wind involved, whatever, but he lost the rear end. The other is what we think is a possibility, is that there could have been another throttle issue that would have been the same thing as what happened in Austria, possibly.
Well, we know how secretive Ferrari are, and we also know, as much as they try to play it off, how clueless Ferrari are in many respects. And what I mean by that is, number one, how secretive they are. When they was being asked about his throttle issue in Austria, you couldn't get a word out of anyone. But also how clueless they are. Matteo Binotto has come out before with the engines and said,
no, I don't know.
No idea. He's come out with this and said, no idea. Either they are masking an absolute shit show behind the scenes, or they genuinely don't know. And I think either way, that is a team that at the moment seem more likely to come third than first in the championship, with probably the best car at the moment on the grid.
I'm finding it very hard to not think that Charles was covering.
It seems like so,
because remember a couple of weeks ago when there was footage of him talking to Binotto after he DNF'd.
He essentially had him in a headlock.
I'm finding it very hard to not back my boy that's doing absolutely nothing wrong, in my opinion. But if there was a mistake, there was a mistake. I'm finding it hard to believe. I don't know.
Let's remember a point that I specifically have made before about Ferrari. Alain Prost said he didn't like the Ferrari, got sacked. Seb Vettel said he didn't like the Ferrari, got sacked. Fernando Alonso said he didn't like the Ferrari, got sacked. Like, these are people that spoke out against Ferrari, and Ferrari said, ciao, Italian.
I've got that, yeah, thanks.
And we're talking Alain Prost, Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel. We're talking the best of the best. These are
three of the top 7 drivers of all time.
And Ferrari have made them have fobbed them off for.
And he is their golden boy as well, right? He is the past. Sorry, not the past. The present and the future of Ferrari.
Absolutely,
that is Charles Leclerc.
And he came through the driver program, and he was obviously at Sauber under a Ferrari contract, I think, wasn't he? Right?
Yeah, correct.
So. Yeah, he's obviously got history with the team as well. I think that win in Monza adds an element to it as well. It sounds stupid, but you know how important that is to the Tifosi
in Monza, yeah,
and to the team. That is the thing. It's not Monaco. It's not for Charles, it's Monaco, but it's not Monaco for the team. It is Monza and maybe Mugello, Imola.
Yeah.
But yeah, and. It's just, maybe it's so plausible to me that he's been told, look, if you want to slag us off, come around the back.
But that's what I mean. It's like, it's so 50-50 for me, because I'm thinking, all right, he said there was a mistake and that he lost the rear end. And we saw that there was like no grip in the rear end of that car, right? Like 100%. I completely think it's understandable to say that. But when he said throttle to me, and again to the commentary team on Sky, it just very much sounds like a possibility that they could have had the same issue that they had 2 weeks before in the last race that he still finished the race on and that we've not found out about. That's just, like you say, it's just so plausible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously in the cool-down room, we didn't really get much of the cool-down room.
Do you remember that? They cut it off with the engineer.
They cut it off halfway through, the engineer telling George and Lewis that it was throttle blockage, which I thought was also a funny phrase, because to me that's not a real term. That he made that term up on the spot.
Of course.
Throttle blockage. That's not a thing, right? There's got to be a better name for it.
Yeah. But it cut the audio cut out.
It did, and
Binotto had 20 quid in someone's pocket, didn't he?
Yeah, it must have been. He must have done it. It seems very plausible to me.
It stinks, doesn't it?
And with a mountain of issues that they've had, both drivers have stayed fairly,
non-critical.
Yeah, in the media, and you've got to imagine there's such a level of frustration. And Charles come out and was said like he's driving the best he's ever driven, but it's all going to be for nothing if he doesn't cut out these stupid mistakes.
He said there was the 25 points that he threw away there, and the 7 points that he threw away. So he's naming his mistakes, right? He's not naming Ferrari's mistakes. He's naming his 2 mistakes. Sorry, I just hit the mic. He's naming his 2 mistakes in Imola.
Yeah.
And there. And he's naming those 2 and saying that if I lose the Drivers' Championship by 32 points, I'll know where they came from.
Yeah.
So he's saying that these are my 2 mistakes, which is the other thing that kind of leads me to think that he's owning up to those. I don't know.
If he loses it by 82 points, he knows where they've gone as well, because he can thank the Ferrari engine for that.
Yeah.
So Charles now sees himself, as we talk about today's winner, Max Verstappen, and I'm going to sort of bring them in together. Charles finds himself 63 points behind Max Verstappen coming into Hungary and then the break. That's not getting turned over, right? We've already said it, but
we've done it once before, and I backed him, right? And I think if some of the races in between we hadn't have had the issues that we've had, I would have stayed backing him. But I think now it looks like they're going to win races before the end of the season, and it looks like Charles hasn't won his last race of the season at all, has he? Like, there's going to be races that he wins, but I think Max is not just a shoe-in, is
there's an element to Max now that he didn't used to have, that I see in Lewis a lot, and it's that those weekends where you can admit that you're not the quickest driver out there, but you'll take home that P2 and those 18 points, and you'll minimize the deficit, should I say.
Yeah.
And Max, he doesn't do anything silly, and he will say, I'm not the quickest guy this weekend, and he will just make sure he's finishing second. Whilst with Charles, it kind of feels like an all or nothing
100%. Yeah.
And that's where this championship is being decided, because, as I say, Verstappen hasn't put in too many spectacular performances this season, but he's always made sure he's there for when these things happen. Do you know what I mean? And he's putting himself in these positions. So I can only sympathize for him. But Max, to me, I think people are scared to say it. Listening to some of the podcasts I've heard over the last couple of days, people are always going, "Oh, it could be done. It could be done." Look, no, it can't. I put me on TikTok, wherever this championship is done. Max Verstappen has won this championship. That turnover in points isn't going to happen. It would take an unfathomable occurrence for that to happen.
It's not just eliminating mistakes from Charles, because he could still make. So we're halfway through the season. He could still make 2 mistakes and win the championship if they won every other race, right? In theory, yeah. Because there's enough points in there. But my thing is thinking that he's not the one that's going to be the cause of this.
No, but we've just watched half a season, so we can only base what we expect on what we've seen.
100%. And there's going to be an element of them trying to get their shit together over the summer break, right? There's going to be an element of that. But also, you know that while he's got maybe 2 mistakes in him for the rest of the season, because we're halfway through, let's just law of fucking averages, right? Let's just say he makes 2 more mistakes. They're going to make 4.
Yeah, because they're going to have 2 more
on strategy or reliability.
Yeah.
So I reckon he wins at least 3 more races, 100%. And I reckon he does come second in the championship. But I also reckon at this rate, Ferrari finished 3rd in the championship.
Well, yeah. So Max has won 7 races this season already. And another statistic I saw is that Max and Charles have the same amount of pole positions in Formula One. They both have 16 poles. But Max has, along the lines, don't have the numbers in front of me, 28 wins, something. Charles has 5. Now, that is a telling story of 2 drivers who are probably so equal on ability, but one's been driving at the top.
I don't know if you could say that. I actually don't know if you could say that Charles is equal on ability to Max. I actually don't. I don't know. That sounds a bit out of pocket.
No, I don't think that's out of pocket. I think Max, as I say, he's a product of last season. And I would say Max before last season and Charles were very much in the same breath, but he has gone up a level, but in a different way. Because as I say, he's not. It's
eliminating mistakes though, isn't it? It's eliminating mistakes. It's staying cool as well.
Yeah, but the way he can manage
not last season. Now he stays very cool.
But he coped with arguably, you know, we talk Senna, Prost, and we talk Hamilton, Rosberg. That's up there as like one of the
best title battles,
but also one of the most intense. So once you've had that, you know, that pressure on your shoulders just feels like this season's pressure must feel like nothing to him.
He also didn't seem stressed last year, and I find him like fascinating. As like a human being, I find him fascinating because he just did not seem stressed last year at all, did he?
No, and you know, whatever happened behind the scenes, I think they handled it as well as they could. But now it's put him in a position where, like we say, where he's just imperious in these appearances. You know, there was no moment this weekend, particularly on Sunday after Charles went out, where you thought, oh, Lewis is behind him. What if he makes a mistake? There was never that thought.
No, 100%.
So, a really good job from Max, and obviously despair for Charles. But then we did have another really good weekend for, as we say, a team that have not suffered mechanical DNF all season and are showing how important that is.
I know. I think they're 100% finishing P2 in the championship.
Yeah, Mercedes, Lewis P2, George P3. First time they've been on the podium together ever. I think maybe.
Wait, who was on the podium?
Spa. I think Lewis was P3. I think, but as a Mercedes,
No, you're right. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was great to see from my perspective, and I think a lot of people are really respecting the performances that these guys are putting in, because they beat Perez on outright pace.
I'm sorry, Perez had a shocker there.
Do you think that he's mentally in a blender a bit at the moment now? because
he's won one race this season, right?
He had one pole position in Saudi and he got one win in Monaco. Arguably, he could have had a second win
if they didn't switch him.
If they didn't switch him in Spain, and he was leading the race in Baku, and then Max. Well, then they turned his car down, so then Max won. But he had this.
We have to address that we don't actually think they turned his car down.
I don't think that at all. No, it's just
something we heard in a podcast.
A ridiculous statement from a bad podcast that said that. So he's just, but where he's been through that rough run of luck, and then he come out of Baku. I think it was Canada after Baku, crashed.
Yeah.
Then what was after Canada? I'm losing Silverstone, right?
Canada straight to Canada to wait. There might be one in the middle that we've missed there. Canada to Silverstone to Austria to France.
Yeah. So then we went Silverstone, and at the time, obviously, he had an incident and went to the back of the grid, got saved by a safety car, and ended up putting in a very good P2. But then I think. He's gone to Austria. He's been spun off by George, ended up, and then this weekend again, he's just kind of, and it feels like all that momentum kind of just got sucked out of him, and he's like a shell of a man at the moment because we know how good he can be. But
I'll tell you what we said last season was that he was very inconsistent last year in what was probably, one of the two best cars. Right, he's very inconsistent last year.
Yeah.
This year we're seeing the same level of inconsistency when things could be going well. That safety car restart, that's silly.
Yeah, and I appreciate that there was some kind of error, but there was an error that was given to every single driver, every single team got the same information. So even though it was slightly wrong information, I don't know the exact ins and outs, but it was along the lines of they basically told him it was ending. And then,
but it ended as soon as Max crossed the line, right?
I have no idea, mate. As I say,
I think the safety car pulls into the pits,
but that's not how it works. The VSC.
There was a VSC this one. Okay, so I'm sure it would have ended when Max crossed the line then.
But that maybe it did, but that's not like the written rule. The written rule is that the race director has the choice. After announcing that the VSC is ending, he has any time up to 15 seconds to announce the race is resumed.
Yeah.
So obviously he can take that full 15 seconds to say you're good to race. But maybe it did coincide with Max crossing the line. I'm not sure. But he was basically, Checo blamed misinformation. But George got the same information that Checo got. The only thing was George was just a bit more switched on.
Yeah.
So, Checo, he can complain, but...
He's got his rule book out as well, hasn't he, George?
He did have his rule book out, didn't he? Because he was very unhappy with Checo. And
I don't think there was contact, actually, was there?
There wasn't.
It looked like there was very close to avoid contact. But George said since his front wheel was alongside the back wheel and he was on the inside, he technically had the corner. So Checo should have had to give the position back, which technically would be right. But I think they just squared it off as a racing incident.
Where was Checo going to go, though? Because obviously George went all the way to the white line in his exit. And that was physically the most he could make the corner. So Checo then, where can he go?
That's why they call it a racing incident, right? Yeah. But I think George was technically right. It's just that he left enough room on that corner. He just didn't leave enough room on the run out of that corner into the next corner because it's quite a heavy chicane, that, isn't it? So.
Yeah, it's tight after that. And I think Toto actually, we got to see Toto to come on the radio and basically say, George, I tell you what you should do, mate. Just overtake him. just shut up, get on with it. And what do you know? He people were lauding George for doing this hanging back tactic and then overtaking Perez. But apparently, I've read this on Twitter, so take this with a pinch of salt if you're listening, and yourself, Joe. But apparently the telemetry showed that what it was is it wasn't George was slowing down and speeding up. Perez pissed off because he thought the VSC, when they come up VSC ending, he thought it ended.
So that's when he fucked off, made a gap.
So he fucked off, but then his delta, you have to match a delta pace. His delta was over, so he had to slow right down to let his delta catch up. Because there's like mini sectors and stuff. So whilst he's catching his delta up, the thing then ended. But then George got by. So
it's just a mistake from not matching the delta then, because he didn't understand the information, even if he thinks it was misinformation, perhaps.
Yeah, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's an excuse for essentially losing out to the Mercedes outright by pace. You know, Lewis got past him at the start. Off the start, Lewis got another great start, by the way, and could have maybe...
He doesn't have a bad start, does he?
No, not really. Got a great start and overtook Perez. And you thought, okay, well, Perez will get him in 2 laps, 3 laps, especially when that DRS kicks in, that Red Bull power. It's going to give him the
he was
kick.
just sucked into that battle, wasn't he? He was just sucked into that battle, and he stayed in that battle pretty much the whole fucking race.
But yeah, he just fell back. He didn't go forwards. He went backwards. And obviously it just didn't work out for Checo. And he is a man that is now solidifying his position as wingman for the season again. Which we didn't think was going to be any different anyway, right? Like we never. I mean, did I ever truly believe that Checo was in it even after Monaco? No.
You did say it though.
Yeah, of course I did. Of course I did. It was Max or Checo. Of course I said Checo.
Yeah.
But I think we all knew. And I think he would have had to have won a couple of races back to back to really turn heads as a serious contender, because we know he can win a one-off race because he's won 3 races ever and they've all been in 3 different seasons. So, you know, we know he can win a one-off race.
They have.
Yeah. So.
Whoa. I didn't realize he'd never won 2 races in a season.
Yeah. So I mean, if he does it this year, I guess that could be something for him to tick off the list. But, you know, you've got to imagine that Checo, who's only got next year left on his contract, that his time could also be running out if he doesn't. But then do they even want Checo to put together a run of results like that? They're probably more than happy with him just coming home in 3rd and 4th.
P2, P3, P4, and just making sure they're going to win the championship.
The truth was, Gasly and Albon and Kvyat, they weren't doing that. But they Red Bull weren't asking them to win races. They just wanted them to score the points that Checo's scoring, whilst they let Max go and put his dick in everyone else.
That's not a terrible tactic, though, is it? Realistically,
it's because proven, if anything.
As we say, Gasly, Albon, Kvyat were like falling out of races, fighting for podium spots, weren't they?
Yeah, big time.
Like, I think especially with Albon is one of the ones that gets talked about a lot, was that he should have finished on the podium like 3 times or something. And every time it was just grasped, like taken away from him. It's just like, well, you know, maybe it is better to save the car. And Checo, you know, apart from the incident that we saw at Canada, and he's had a couple of spins and stuff, but like most of the time he's pretty much in his own sort of race anyway, isn't he? He's always going to bring it home, top 5, top 4. Most
him
of
and
the time.
George, mate, they just have quiet Sundays, don't they? Yeah. And it's also like another way to look at it is look at Sainz and Leclerc right now. Ferrari haven't chosen an outright number 1. We know who it should be, but they haven't chosen it. And look at Austria sprint race. They were and Silverstone, which they got lucky with, because if they won't pick a number 1 and they're letting them fight, and they've got that dynamic of 2 drivers fighting to be the number 1, there's not one clear favorite. Look at the dynamic that's created, and they're tripping over themselves and losing points,
bringing other people into the fight when they're fighting with each other.
And at the end of the day, you know, I can say with chest, I firmly believe that Lewis wins that race on another day, and that he would have won the race that day because of the Ferrari not choosing who they wanted to prioritize. And obviously things worked out the way they did, and it was a great watch, but it was a shame. So Mercedes now, you know, they've got one more race in Hungary that we know Lewis is a specialist at. It's one of his most successful tracks.
A specialist when he's not starting the grid by himself.
Yeah, of course. And we will obviously have a big discussion about that Hungary race. And he has said, you know, let's not rule out winning, but at the same time, I think he knows that that's more of just like a pleasing comment. You know, he was never going to. He's not the type of guy to say no, we can't win, Do you know what I mean? So
no, he's not a Lando Norris character, is he?
Yeah, he's not. So he will say that. I think the truth be told, the Ferrari will be too good that weekend, but that's later on. But Lewis, they're gonna go into the summer break, and Mercedes now they've got themselves, as we've all said a lot of the season, whilst picking up the pieces, they've done damage limitation because with a much inferior car, they've kept themselves in touch to a point where these upgrades are now coming in and they're catching up with the field a little bit. It's kind of like you should have put us to bed whilst you could, because now we're here. Do you know what I mean?
44 points between Mercedes and Ferrari.
Mate, that is one race weekend.
I tell you what, in general, you're going to see Mercedes finishing top 5.
Yeah.
Every single week, I think, both of them.
Well, we have.
That's my main thing is I think we're going to see both of them finishing top 5.
Yeah.
But we are going to see some DNFs and some mistakes from Ferrari. Whether it's down to either of the drivers or not, we're going to see some DNFs, right? So I think in my head, that's done. Mercedes are getting P2 in the championship off merit.
And that is pure merit because they have just scrimped and scraped and they've had some bad weekends, but they've just maximized what they've had because I just look at the situation they were in and I do wonder sometimes, think
about where they'd be if George didn't crash out in Silverstone lap 1.
Yeah, well, that's, let's say he comes P5, probably, which is 12 points, 10 points, whatever. That's 34 points.
Gaps going.
And it's really is, Lewis would have easily probably come higher than third and Perez wouldn't have come P2. And it's all very interesting. And Mercedes, they are in there. And I really was worried that they wouldn't win a race this season. But it's starting to look more and more likely that they will. And it's starting to look more and more likely that it may be Lewis's side of the garage. But I'm happy with either. I truly am. Obviously, I have a preference. But I would truly be happy just to see them win a race this season. I will be intrigued to see if they carry on with this podless car next year as well. I will be intrigued to see if they've really done enough research now that they're unlocking that version of this car. Or
what I will say around that is it must be fucking aero because we know their engine's always fast.
Yeah.
So it just must be aero. The engine's also very reliable. So in my opinion, that's like where the time must be going, right?
It just has to be.
It's just not the engine, is it? There's no way it's the engine. There's no way Mercedes haven't built an engine that's going to stay within pace of those other two, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard to quantify because the two teams that are supplied by Mercedes are Williams and Aston Martin. And
McLaren.
Oh, and McLaren. My apologies. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And they are all struggling, but it's hard to really get to gauge from the Aston Martin and the Williams because they are so bad. But I guess McLaren obviously have their own troubles, which they're trying to work on, and they've brought upgrades.
Yeah.
Rounding out the top 5 anyway, because we really are going for it here, was Carlos Sainz, and a man that I think Charles could have done with having a wingman this weekend. I think they had to take the penalty points, didn't they? But
due to the last engine being on fire.
Yeah, but it would have really been an interesting race to see Max from Leclerc, from Sainz, and just see how the 2v1 could have panned out because the undercut is so powerful. They could have covered off Max with one, gone a bit longer with the other, like they did with Charles.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it was Carlos Sainz. I was worried for him, particularly obviously after he got his new contract this year. He started, I think he DNF'd 2 races, 2 consecutive races after that. But he's picked his shit up a bit as well, hasn't he, Carlos Sainz?
As I said, he was the fastest car on track by a long way after Leclerc crashed out. I think he possibly was faster than Leclerc as well, but he had the fastest lap by 2 seconds.
Yeah. I think he did pit obviously towards the end for new mediums. So
no.
That would influence it. But
what was interesting, I did think as well, was the battle that he was having with Perez and the fact that there could have been a delay, but when they told him to box,
Yeah, it's like
when he was trying to overtake Perez.
It's like they're all looking down at a clipboard, isn't it? It's like they're all looking down at a clipboard. Clipboard, what is this? Fucking 1997. They're all looking down at an iPads. Yeah, they're all looking at iPads, and they've gone, "Oh yeah, you should pit now," and no one's looked up at the screen to see what was a brilliant battle between Checo.
That he was winning as well.
That he was pulling it off, and they're like, "Oh, pop him, mate, if you can."
And he was like, "No, not now."
Yeah. And I also think, I don't think I guess there's a risk of reward element, and Charles Leclerc was going to be heavily on their mind, because I was hoping that they would leave him out and say, have a go at getting further and see how you go.
He had the 5 seconds, didn't he, originally as well?
Well, yeah, he had the penalty for the unsafe release. Well done, Ferrari, again. Cheers for that.
He had the 5-second penalty, and it did look like they were going to leave him out. And I think he genuinely would have built up a gap on
I think so.
Anyone. So I do think if the tyres could have lasted, that they didn't need to pit him.
But obviously, as I say, with Charles in mind, Charles went about 17, 18 laps on those mediums, overheated the rears, went into the wall. So if they go, you know what, Carlos, stay out, and those tyres fade, he goes into the wall. Everyone says, why didn't Ferrari box him? So
yeah, no, 100%.
It was a tough decision, but you couldn't have just asked him a little bit later than when they did.
Oh, mate. But yeah, P5 good.
P5 good. Sainz doing his own strategy again, which benefited him, which obviously he did in Monaco. And that helped him. So yeah, it's a good, like, it's good for, especially from the back of the grid. I thought he drove really well, got himself 11 points in the bag. And he's solidifying himself, which is only more of a headache for Ferrari, because he's not going to lay down either.
No, yeah. And I think for him as well, it's one of those ones where he has to solidify himself. Otherwise, we've got a lacking of seats available, right?
Yeah, we really do.
So I think for him, very good that he's, solidifying his spot in that team, proving that he can be the fastest driver on track. And yeah, I thought he was really good.
He still is only 1 point ahead of George Russell, by the way, in the World Championship.
Which is wild, because he's won races.
Yeah, he's won a race. And he's 1 singular point ahead of George Russell. So that's another battle to keep an eye on, because of George and Lewis's consistent scoring and Ferrari's fluctuation does obviously intrigue you as to whether Carlos Sainz can get himself either up, or is he going to fall back into that battle. But yeah, I mean, I guess we've kind of accidentally done like a top 5 review, but that's where the action's at. Looking through the rest of the field.
Fernando Alonso made me laugh.
What, when he was purposefully destroying McLaren's tyres? That geezer is
he
just
made me laugh.
An awful bloke, isn't he? He's just a nasty piece of work.
What did he say? I want to keep them behind me to destroy their tyres or something like that.
Yeah, he was specifically slowing down so that McLaren were in this weird window where they weren't close enough to get, like, he would give them DRS on the main straight, knowing they couldn't get close enough. And then the Alpine was quick enough that he would break the DRS to the long bit. So then they'd just bust up their tyres and get all these like blisters and stuff on these
turbulence as well.
And then he'd just be like, anyway, see you in a bit. I'm off for a bit.
Oh, he really, really made me laugh when he was doing that.
And he said he was doing it. And, someone from Renault was saying, like, well, I say Renault, Alpine. You've got to be a special type of guy to be able to have the ability to do that, to pick up your pace, like, and
tactically.
Drop it. And they knew they weren't in that top 5 fight, so he knew there was no point for him to try and chase the front guys. He just had to focus on behind him. Did a perfect job. Great start, by the way, Fernando. As always, box office from the start. And I wish we'd seen a bit of that Fernando in Canada when he was alongside Max Verstappen. But that's, I believe, 6 races in a row scoring points for Fernando Alonso, as Alpine solidify their place in 4th in the championship, McLaren 5th.
We did talk about him not having good luck as well, didn't we, Fernando?
Yeah,
recently?
And that was something that really was all that was holding him back. I mean, Australia, he would have been front row in Australia if it wasn't for, I believe, a hydraulic failure or something. So Alpine v McLaren.
I think it's 7 races in a row.
So there you go. I mean, there you go. It's
7 races in a row. Last time he didn't score was Italy.
Imola.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Last time he didn't score.
And all there
that
was,
happened there was 4 DNFs in a row. Sorry, 2 DNFs and 2 finishing outside the points. Sorry. So there's 4 races in a row where he didn't score points. He scored 2 points in Bahrain. Since then, he scored 2, 6, 6, 2, 10, 1, 8.
And it's, points. When you're driving for Alpine, who are doing a fantastic job, by the way, and that car is, every time they bring upgrades to that car, it's getting better and better. And it really is.
Does look good as well to drive.
I've said that they're the most 7th and 10th place car on the grid, but I now think that they are the car that will come 6th or 7th when, let's say when the top 6, the big 3 all finish. That is the next car that I expect to come in line now, whether it is Esteban or Fernando. Not far behind is the McLaren, who have made upgrades, and we know that after the summer break they're going to come with more. So we can't rule them out for the entirety of the season. But they got double points as well, McLaren, this weekend. So
which thankfully starts to become more common now.
Yeah.
And is there anything I can say?
I think the grid is settling down into a bit more of a pattern now, because it was very erratic. Do you remember race 1 where it was like...
Well, there was a Haas issue there, wasn't there, where they were very much throwing everyone off, weren't they?
Well, that Alfa Romeo as well. Let's not forget, Bottas has got how many points? 40 odd points? 46 points?
Well, Guan Yu Zhou Guan Yu has 5.
5, yeah. And Valtteri's got 46.
46.
But, Valtteri has had a really horrible run over the last few races. So that shows like how the grid is now settling. And unfortunately for Alfa Romeo, they're falling very much towards the bottom of that pecking order at the moment. But yeah, so it is going to be intriguing to see how this works out. Obviously, McLaren and Alpine, there is only 4 points in it. And then it's Alfa Romeo, very much carried by Valtteri Bottas. And then Haas, AlphaTauri, Aston Martin. I would say that the constructors kind of tells the story at the moment. I think Aston Martin should be higher based on their race pace.
I think there's 3 swaps that are going to happen. I think Aston Martin beats AlphaTauri.
Yeah.
I think that McLaren do beat Alpine in the end.
Okay.
And I do think Mercedes finish above Ferrari.
It's and we know Haas have got upgrades, so I'm happy with them coming 7th. Come on, the Gunther Steiner and the Mick and the fucking K-Mag.
To be fair, if their upgrades work, they would not be out of place finishing above Alpha either.
No, not at all. In fact,
they could very much be the old best of the rest of the rest.
I think it would, if the upgrades work, they would be odds on to finish above Alfa Romeo, who at the moment are having a horrible, horrible run. So, bar Canada, I think they were actually okay in Canada, I think, if I remember correctly.
So I think we've got now, hopefully in my head, Mick who can actually score points, K-Mag who can score points, just sort of, I'd say the majority of the time. It's about half the time, isn't it, at the minute?
Yeah.
I think they've got a team there. I do, genuinely. And I do think if the upgrades work, sounds like K-Mag's going to be the only one to have them in Hungary.
That's fair.
You have to prioritize, and you also is kind of testing them in a way as well, isn't he? It's like,
oh, can I tell you a rumor I heard, Joe?
Oh, here we go.
And I'm gonna hit the rewind button just for a very brief second. Apparently, as you may know, after the summer break, we are having some revised aerodynamic changes.
Yes.
Concord porpoising that all teams will have to follow, and a lot of it is to do with the flexible floor that particularly some teams have been benefiting from. Red Bull.
Are you talking about the Alpine?
Yes, totally.
Yeah, I saw that picture.
Anyway, apparently, again, it's all rumors, but I'm willing it to be true. I'm willing it. Checo was running the new spec floor for after thing. Mercedes were faster than Checo. So possibly.
Did you see what I was talking about Alpine though?
No.
There was a picture, and you know how sometimes in the garages you can see the underside of the car because it's like really shiny floors.
Yeah.
Alpine's floor looks spot on to Red Bull's floor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll have to try and find the tweet.
You'll have to send it to me for after.
Or it was about the skid plate or something. It was something that based on the underside.
All very interesting then. So yeah, apparently Checo was running the new spec floor that Red Bull were looking to potentially use after the revised regulations. And obviously Checo he was on pace with Mercedes at best. Mercedes, of course, I don't think have as much revision to do to their car. It's stiff as a boat.
So they're just doing it next year.
Yeah. But obviously I think they very much followed. They weren't a team that had this flexi floor, were they? Mercedes. No. Also, I believe Red Bull and Ferrari have elements of it that they've got. So it is interesting to see that. And I just, you saying about the upgrades and stuff made me think about that. It's not actually confirmed to be true, but I'm just willing it to be true. It spices things up, and it would be, imagine they come to Spa after the summer break and it's like Mercedes are on pole and Red Bull are
in the mud.
In the fucking mud. Going through the rest of the race, we had Ocon and Tsunoda collided on lap 1. Kind of ruined Tsunoda's race. Entirely. Ocon got a 5-second penalty and still managed to come P8. So
they're doing 5 seconds a lot now, aren't they? They're doing it for pretty much any incident that a driver's at fault for. And I think that he did completely ruin Tsunoda's race, and Tsunoda didn't finish the race. I don't know. To me, that seemed really light.
Yeah, it just feels like, it wasn't like the worst move in the world. I will say that. Like, he has put it down the inside. He's hit the curb. Where he's hit the curb, he's had to. It's just a micro adjustment. You watch his hands 1 second do that to level the car out, and that was enough for the car to understeer into Tsunoda and spin him out. But at the end of the day, he has caused a collision, and he has. I think they need to. It's almost double jeopardy. So it needs to be 5 seconds for causing a collision and 5 seconds for ruining Tsunoda's race.
Especially if you're talking about the driver start being 20 seconds behind everyone else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like, I don't know, maybe if they look at the delta and they say, this is where the car would have been. You caused the collision. This is where he is now. You have to take that much time.
Yeah.
Like if Tsunoda's 20 seconds behind everyone else, maybe Ocon should have 20 fucking seconds.
Yeah, just go and sit with him in the corner and just like.
By the way, you guys are in a new race now. It's just you two.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, that's kind of box office. Just let them out the back, just go at it.
Just do bumper cars.
Yeah, but so it is something that will be intriguing to see. But so it was warranting a penalty, but maybe should have got more of a penalty. I'm just looking at the results and seeing if there was anything else worth mentioning. Stroll started. Oh, can you remember where? I'm going to say roughly P18, but I don't know the exact starting position.
They didn't make it out of Q1, so that's a fair guess. It's right in the middle of Q3, Q1, isn't it?
A very common place for Aston Martin at the moment, going out in Q1. But then they get to the race, and I don't know if it's that they're looking after their tyres really well and their strategy and whatever, but come the end of the race, you always go, oh, Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel were P12 and P11. They started in P18. Fair play. Like,
what I will say is if you look at so we tend to have a few DNFs, right?
Yeah, of course.
They tend to not DNF.
No, it doesn't happen too often.
I will say that.
Unless Stroll does something.
But I think apart from Latifi, everyone that DNF'd started in front of them. So we could, in theory, say that they might have inherited 4 places. Possibly. Yeah,
of course. It's a net P15. But
we could in theory say that they might be capitalizing inheriting because
of course.
I don't think that car, as much as you say it didn't have bad race pace, but we're also talking about fighting for P10 with both cars, and then you've got Gasly, Albon behind them.
Yeah,
it's very much in a gap, isn't it? It's very much in a gap, and I think it is where kind of, I don't know. I think as I said, I think there's a chance they finish above the AlphaTauri, but that is kind of where the car is.
Yeah. And that is them maximizing this weekend, truth be told.
1 point.
1 point. It really is. And of course, it wasn't without controversy. Stroll definitely left a little something on Seb when he broke for that final corner.
That was contact, right?
I think there was a minor bit of contact, and I think that Vettel very much felt that Stroll almost purposefully backed him up, because there's no real other line you take through that corner, particularly when Seb took a wider entrance to it. There was nowhere anywhere else Seb could go, and I think Lance knew that, and I think Lance knew that there was a chance he was going to lose that point.
I think he parked it.
I think he parked it a little bit, and
he left it out. Do you think he was anticipating contact?
I don't know. I can't tell you that.
I reckon he was.
But he is a naughty man when he does things like that. But whilst I'm talking about Seb, and I'll go back to Fernando, both are reported to want to race again next year, which means that the driver merry-go-round is going to very much be put off because there isn't many seats. But I think that they're the two that are going to trigger silly season.
The cascade of events that we've discussed before. I don't want them to go, but I also don't want them to stay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as I say, I want another team. I want another team just to get some new drivers in, like some of these young great drivers. Toto come out this week and said, almost point blankly, I can't help Nick de Vries get a seat in Formula One. He's probably going to have to leave and go off on his own if he wants to race in Formula One, because I can't help him.
Don't know. You look at the place that we've got with a lot of the drivers at the minute, with Seb never having a chance of scoring a podium and only fighting for a point or two. You've got Latifi, who will finish at the back of the grid every single week. You've got the rest of them are quite young. I will say that. You've got Daniel Ricciardo that's kind of on the out as well.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle, isn't it? You can't complain too much. There are plenty of drivers that have got their opportunity, but yeah, you'll always look at the ones that haven't and think of the underperforming drivers. I will say, I still think that Yuki Tsunoda is an underperforming driver. Nicholas Latifi is an underperforming driver. Mick Schumacher, up until the last 2 weeks, was an underperforming driver. And you look at these seats. Daniel Ricciardo,
22.
Daniel Ricciardo, underperforming driver. And these are seats that, you wonder, were they better off? I think Lance Stroll as well, if I'm not mistaken, is an underperforming driver. 4 points, underperforming. I know it's easy bait. Well, not easy bait. It's an easy out for you to say that it should be the old drivers leaving, but they're not the ones that aren't performing well, are they? No, they're the ones that are. If anything, you see Fernando's P10 in the championship, Bottas P9, Lewis P6. Vettel's only P14. Yeah, it's and he missed two races. 2 races at the beginning of the season. No, even though the car was a shitbox anyway, he's never going to do anything. But it's it's still I don't know. I just think where the underperforming drivers are. They're all at the back, but I can't. You just can't. You can't be angry at Alonso or Vettel for wanting to continue doing what they love, can you? No, of course not. And as we say, they're getting the results. So we shall see. But I would expect later on this season to see some contract announcements. Fernando looks like he's going to stay on. The guy's loving it, and I respect it. And Seb as well. I think I'm going to sort of interject here and say I think we need to call that a race review, because we still have our predictions to go. And I know that we're about to hit the hour mark. So... and it's your turn to quiz me on guess the driver as well, so that could take easily an hour. No, I've got my driver, and we'll be all good. But yeah, so that was France, and I think it was actually a really entertaining race. France actually isn't on the calendar next year at the moment. The contract ran out this year, and a load of fans, when they were allowed on the track on Thursday, wrote 2023 in the gravel in one of the bits, making a very clear statement to say they would like to see the Paul Ricard track back on the calendar.
I think it's a good track, and it was a good race, as we said.
We've got two French drivers. Alpine is a French team. See the crowd; it was a record crowd for France.
Yeah.
The sport is growing, and I think that France should grow with it. We've got French drivers, French team, Alain Prost, absolute French legends.
Yeah.
Keep Paul Ricard. Don't go back to Magny-Cours. Didn't like it. Paul Ricard. Yeah. So that's France, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And now we're 1 week later, double header. We're off to the Hungaroring. Rated the second hardest track to overtake behind Monaco. And as we saw, Alonso defended for 10 laps against Lewis. You can make your car very wide, and you can see just why. It's going to be an important qualifying this weekend.
I'm going to look like such a mug when I say a Charles double, aren't I? Because they're just going to mug me off.
We have just spent a good 20 minutes of this podcast saying bad things about Ferrari, but
he is going to win the double, and they're going to win a 1-2.
But
I think the fact that I have to say that and just look like a mug.
But I'm going to say Sainz, Pole, Leclerc win just to change it up. But I'm going to say that they get a 1-2 as well.
Silly, aren't we?
We're done.
Silly.
We're a bad podcast. We will never learn. I
hate it. No, rain's predicted.
Saturday, I believe, is Saturday is 60% chance of rain. I haven't looked any further into it than that, so you'll have to have a look. But
mate, if it is actually raining, it's probably a Max on pole. But
yeah, I would agree. 60% chance of rain. Okay, with that in mind, I will alter it and say Max, pole, Charles win. If there's rain. If it's dry, Sainz, pole, Charles win. I'm not backing Charles to get pole this weekend just because it's too easy. Charles Le qualifying is not getting my vote just to make it interesting.
All right, I'm checking because I think there's supposed to be rain. So Saturday and Sunday are rain.
So we could have a really interesting weekend. Now, if you remember, you cast your mind back, as we have alluded to last year.
When Bottas went bowling.
There was rain. Bottas went bowling. Esteban Ocon weaved his way through. And somehow ended up a race winner at Hungary. Nicholas Latifi also became a point scorer that day, as did George Russell, I think.
Yeah, George finished in the points, but at the time, Nicky was going for a podium, wasn't he? And
yeah.
George came out with that famous sacrifice my race to help Nicky. I'll box early, I'll stay out, I'll do what you want me to do. So.
We had, of course, wide Alonso. Max took damage but stayed in the race, but didn't really have any pace.
Both McLarens were fucked, weren't they?
Yeah, I think there was all sorts that happened. And we had Lewis starting on the grid on his own. It really was, for a track where there is...
disaster.
It was a shit show, but a great shit show. And, as I say, for a race that, we've had many amazing incidents there. You think back to Button's first win, many of the Lewis Hamilton victories that we've seen there over the years. There has been some really great races. But typically, it isn't the most exciting on-track action. It is a weekend where the Saturday bears as much importance as the Sunday.
I'm seeing rain on Saturday and Sunday, and I don't know the exact hours of it.
Okay.
But so far, I'm going to have to call a Max double, purely based on that.
It is, yeah. It is going to be interesting. It really is. But I'm going to stick with Ferrari. I know the track layout very well, and
so it's definitely a wet qualifying, by the way.
Yeah, it's a 60% apparently is what I read. 60%.
I'm on BBC weather for Budapest.
Yeah.
How far away are we from Budapest?
Yeah, it's in Budapest.
Like in Budapest.
Yeah,
so when BBC weather says Budapest, it's like
yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at more than likely a 2:00 qualifying, right?
Probably, yeah.
97% chance of rain.
Wow.
According to the BBC.
Inject it.
But then Sunday is low. So I'm going to say Verstappen pole.
Yeah.
regardless, I'm not doing the old weather dependent. This is based on the weather I've looked at. I think Verstappen pole, Leclerc win.
Okay. I just think that this track really suits Ferrari. So if they're given the right platform, Max shouldn't beat them this weekend at
I also
point.
think there's an example. There's a situation in which Leclerc doesn't do well in qualifying because it's wet.
Maybe. I mean,
there's that situation in my head as well. So.
These are all permutations that we can think about. I think it is going to be an eye-opener. I think that I'm not actually expecting the best race in the world, to be honest with you. I think we got a treat last year, but that's not the most typical Hungaroring race, and it might settle in to be not quite the viewing that we will expect. So it is going to be interesting. I think strategy is going to be huge this weekend,
and we know how good Ferrari are at that.
Yeah, so that again really should tell me to change my predictions, but I'm not. The Ferrari car, as far as I'm concerned, the Ferrari car is so well suited to the Hungaroring. Max should not beat them
on Sunday,
on Saturday or Sunday.
You think in the wet?
In the wet, maybe.
That's what I mean. I'm looking at the weather, thinking it's definitely going to rain on Saturday for qualifying. 90. It doesn't go down below 94% rain. So it's up to 90 at midday, and it doesn't go down below 90% till after 8 p.m. I think it's a wet qualifying. I think Verstappen wins, gets P1.
I think that also, as we saw in Silverstone, Merck's pace was brilliant in the dry, and then it rained for qualifying, and Merck didn't really have the beans to put it up to.
Even though they've got two drivers that are very good in the wet.
Yeah, so I think that Merck will probably qualify P5, P6 or something. And again, they'll be looking also towards Sunday. But I'm always open to a shock. Depends on maybe teams will set their cars up differently. They'll look at these weather things and they'll set up with different downforce things and what have you. And maybe, with a bit of rain, we can expect the unexpected. So maybe we can get something of a similar ilk to what we got last year. So, realistically, we are going to be talking about maybe seeing another Alpine success story. Could we get another Alpine podium? Or a Fernando in qualifying in Canada.
Where's your wild card?
I've just said Fernando qualifying in Canada, and it's just like my eyes are bolted open now because I'm just like, holy shit, that rained in Canada qualifying, didn't it?
Yeah.
And holy shit, Fernando, and holy shit, Esteban Ocon. And then holy shit, that two Haas qualified like P5 and P6 that day. Woo! I think that I'm going to go for like a wild card on the Saturday and a wild card on the Sunday, just because I can, really. So
there's no rules here.
There is no rules here. So I'm going to say that an Alpine is going to get into the top 5 in qualifying again. Because in theory, it shouldn't. So that is a wild card as far as I'm concerned. There are 6 cars that should beat it, and it's going to get into the top 4. I've just upped it by 1.
I was going to say, we're raising the stakes here.
And on Sunday, I'm going to say that we're going to see a mistake from Max Verstappen.
That's a wild card if I've ever heard one.
Yeah.
We've just gone through 2 seasons of him basically never making a mistake ever.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. We're going to see a mistake from Max, maybe into turn 1 from the start, and we're going to see an Alpine break into the top 4 in qualifying again. They're my wild cards.
You're ready for me to be wild?
Okay, you've got a smile on your face that is interesting.
But based on my smile, what do you reckon my wild card is?
I think that Mick's going to win the race.
No, my wild card is based on drama ensuing. Basically, I'm hoping for mayhem and carnage.
Similar to last year, kind of bowling.
Well, considering it's not going to be raining for Sunday, no, but like carnage, something going wrong. I'm putting Lando on the podium.
Landodium, mate. Come on.
Because it's completely out of the blue at the minute, isn't it?
It's such a wild card.
He's so P5 at the minute, isn't it?
They're so nowhere near, mate. Like, they're nowhere near. The fact that he qualified P5 in France was nothing short of a miracle. Because they are like, on average, about 1.5 seconds slower per lap. than the leading bunch, and he out-qualified George Russell, who has about a second a lap faster car than the McLaren at the moment. Fair play. I'm happy for it to come through. I want it to happen for Lando, or Danny. Danny can have it.
I'll tell you what I will say at the minute. 1, 2, 3. Only 3 races Lando's not scored points in this season in a fucking shitbox.
Yeah. It has been. Although I remember, I think he got the podium in Imola. We were like, oh shit, the McLaren's actually the 3rd best car.
It just fucking isn't.
It just fucking isn't. It is.
It
funny.
just isn't.
It's that early season, like as we said, like from race 1, race 2, and race 3, where the grid was just so. It was like someone had a snow globe and they were shaking it, and the teams were just pissing all over the place. And yeah, we've just. It is up and down, but they will come with upgrades after this race. So that's
Hungary.
That's Hungary. That's what's going to happen in Hungary. Put your bets on, everybody, and thank us later when you
lose all of your money on what we've just said, because it's all wrong.
It always is. It always is. Okay, so 2 more segments. Canadian catastrophe of the week. Nicholas Latifi got driven into by Kevin Magnussen and didn't finish the race. Well done, Nicholas, for keeping the streak going.
Yeah, we need a catastrophe every week. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense.
And you have kept that going. So
it wasn't really, as we said during the live when we were watching the race, it wasn't his fault at all.
The last few actually haven't been his fault, but the fact that he's been involved in them is enough. It's
a catastrophe.
It's a catastrophe. And of course, it's time for
Yes, the driver.
Joseph, your driver for the day. And by the way, I just want you to know that I very tactically wrote the name of the driver at the bottom.
Because of what I told you about last week.
Because we both have recently tried to read the name of our driver at the start. Okay. So the driver this week that I have selected, my first clue for you. His first race was in 2016, the Australian Grand Prix in 2016. Which was the first race of the season. He's had 35 starts in Formula One out of 37 entries, and he's earned himself 9 points.
9 points.
Yeah. So it's not a massively prolific driver.
Lance Stroll.
It is not Lance Stroll.
When did he start? Am I far off? Was he
I'm not sure when Lance Stroll would have started.
Maybe 9 points is probably pretty low for him, actually.
But I think he's had a couple podiums.
Yes.
Yeah. Second clue.
Go on.
This driver's last race was the 2017 Japanese Grand Prix.
Fuck.
He drove all of his races from 2016 to 2017. I believe he drove all of his races for Renault. I'm now, even though I basically took that off the Wikipedia, I'm now going to check it.
Just in case.
Yes. So I'm freaking out.
Renault 2016-17.
You do still, of course, have one more clue after this.
You think it's going to help me, realistically?
No. Maybe. Yeah, all his races were for Renault. From 2016 to 2017, a lovely yellow Renault.
One of the best looking cars.
It is a very pretty car. Particularly that 2017 one, very nice looking car. I think that's around where you got that shirt, that Renault shirt, that era from.
Mine was, I believe, it was the Infinity, so it would have been
a little bit after that.
Sainz era. 2 seasons, 35 races. That's not even 2 full seasons either.
No, Japanese Grand Prix was a little bit before the end.
Yeah. And it's 2016, 2017, and it's Renault. I don't have a guess, so I'm going to submit to round 3, please.
Okay. This British driver had teammates such as Nico Hülkenberg, and was replaced by Carlos Sainz in 2018. Would you like me to read it again?
No. I believe you. I just don't think I know who it is. I would have heard of him though, wouldn't I?
I would be surprised if you haven't.
You'd be surprised if I haven't.
Well, just like, I know you. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh fuck it, Paul Ricard.
No, where the streak is over, which is a shame.
But
Jolyon Palmer.
No idea. Never heard of him.
Oh, never mind.
How many races did Paul Ricard race for? Because I feel like a dick now.
I'm going to say like 70, 60.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
Like 3 seasons, maybe.
Am I really wrong?
59 starts.
Oh. Okay.
I was just going with British and not very good.
Yeah, Jolyon Palmer.
Literally never heard of him.
Raced in Formula 2 in 2010. He also raced a GP2 from 2011 to 2014. Was a test driver for Lotus and Force India, by the looks of things. Was never like a popular driver, and even as a Brit, we never heard about him. But I thought you might know him because he was like 2016 era, which I know was when he started to really take an interest. So
yeah, no,
and it's weird because he was obviously in that Renault era where Sainz come in, and then after Sainz it was like Ocon and Ricardo, and
it got big after that, didn't it? Kind of.
And he was like just before it, so I didn't know if you'd know him or not. But yeah, so that was he's I think he's like the BBC or like Radio 5 live commentator for Formula 1 now as well.
Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Jolyon. But
sorry, mate. I haven't heard of you.
You were never great, to be fair, mate. So I think his best ever result was 6th place in a race. So
based on the points, that might have been his only fucking result then.
Yeah. So he finished 6th in Singapore 2017, and that was his first points of the season. Oh, Jolyon, never mind. Well, Joe, that's a podcast. That's an hour and 20-minute podcast, if my calculations are correct.
There we go.
I thank you all, as always, for listening or watching. Click on the subscribe button or the follow button on Spotify.
There's a bell that you can do on both of them as well.
Bell us
you
up,
can
man.
rate us. You can rate us at give us 5 stars on Spotify.
Give us 5 stars, please. And just, we will see you after Hungary. Stay safe.
Oh, we did some shout outs a couple of weeks ago. Has anyone told you they've heard it?
Yeah, House.
See, Paul's not come back to me.
Oh, Paul, man. House. Text us again when you hear this one.
Go on.
Love you all. House! Bye, everyone.